The content of this podcast has not been evaluated by Health Canada or the FDA. It is educational in nature and should not be taken as medical advice. Always consult a qualified medical professional to see if a diet, lifestyle change, or supplement is right for you. Any supplements mentioned are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Please note that the opinions of the guests or hosts are their own and may not reflect those of Advanced Orthomolecular Research Incorporated. Welcome to Supplementing Health, a podcast presented by Advanced Orthomolecular Research. We are all about applying evidence-based and effective dietary, lifestyle, and natural health product strategies for your optimal health. In each episode, we will feature very engaging clinicians and experts from the world of functional and naturopathic medicine to help achieve our mission to empower people to live their best lives naturally. Are you regularly exhausted, anxious, or having a hard time concentrating? These can be signs of stress-related burnout. Give yourself the support you need with Relax and Recharge. It contains rhodiola and ashwagandha, two powerful adaptogenic herbs which help the body to adapt to stress. It helps improve focus, memory, stamina, and reduces the feelings of stress, making it an ideal supplement for students, shift workers, and those who need extra mental energy. Hello, and thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Supplementing Health. I'm your host, Cassie Price, and today I am joined by Jordan Bruce. She is a holistic nutritionist located in Vancouver, BC, whose goal is to help her clients prevent illness and support current imbalances through blood analysis, life changes, and nutrition guidance. Today, we are going to discuss burnout and digestion, as well as the influencing factors such as stress level. Welcome, Jordan.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So this is such a diverse topic. Why don't we dive right in, and you can share with us some of the signs and symptoms of burnout that people should be watching for.
Yes, it is such a diverse topic and it impacts so many other areas. So you may see symptoms across like different organs and body parts. So the number one symptom I would say that's most consistent is just feeling really fatigued, really tired, really exhausted. Some of my clients will have trouble getting out of bed. Others will feel like really wired at night, which is kind of like a sign that cortisol, the stress hormone, is higher at night, and we want it high in the morning and low in the evening. Other signs of burnout would be like shift in weight. Sometimes people will hold a little bit of extra weight in like the lower belly area. Also just feeling like very overwhelmed, and maybe something that you used to kind of be able to cope with no problem might now cause additional stress and feelings of like anxiety or depression. So mood changes for sure. And then also changes in appetite and like how hungry you are pretty consistent. Same with craving. Sometimes we crave like the higher sugar foods or even the saltier, fattier foods. And then there's so many others, differences in changes in blood sugar levels. Some of you may know the term, the common loose nickname term called hangry, which I see frequently in clients. And it's just when we get so hungry and our blood sugar levels have dipped that we almost get like angry and we need food like now. And then also insomnia and having a hard time falling asleep, as well as changes in sex drive. If you're just exhausted, you're not going to probably want to be intimate and you're just not going to have that drive. A few more, I'll just list a few more. Your immune system can be quite down-regulated, meaning you're more at risk of getting sick or higher infections and inflammatory conditions. And then also brain fog. Brain fog is a big one. It's kind of hard to explain if you've never had it, but essentially you just kind of feel foggy and not as focused as previously. And then also two common ones I see are also, there's a link between our adrenal glands and the thyroid. So just someone may have some thyroid symptoms like weight changes, temperature changes, bowel shifts. as well as decision fatigue, like just getting overwhelmed by like having to make decisions throughout the day.
Oh, that's a lot of different things that could be coming up. So with many health conditions, you tend to have a spectrum from early warning signs to kind of disease state. Does that apply to burnout? And on the spectrum would some of these symptoms fall, or are they kind of throughout the entire thing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So if you're kind of there's a theory, and there are actually 3 stages with respect to burnout, essentially. So the first stage would be like an alarm stage. And then the second stage is called resistance stage. And then the third would be exhaustion stage. And you can kind of tell by just even the title of them, like it's going to get more severe and you're going to feel those negative symptoms more as we progress and get to the third stage. And you're going to have more of those hormone imbalances and more negative symptoms. And it's lovely when we can kind of get to it when it's in the first or second stage. So really noticing those changes in your body, and instead of ignoring them, choosing to work with a practitioner and support them.
Okay, awesome. And so a common term that comes up a lot now, especially in the industry, is adrenal fatigue. How does that relate specifically to this burnout and those stages you just described?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. When I hear burnout, my brain automatically goes to adrenal fatigue. So, adrenal fatigue would be like the well-known kind of term in the wellness industry and just among the general population. But clinically, what I like to refer to it is HPA axis dysregulation. So what that stands for is the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. So that tells us that there is an imbalance between the communication between the hypothalamus and the pituitary in the brain to the adrenals. So it's very all-encompassing, and you know, if you went to a doctor, they would say like, oh, adrenal fatigue doesn't exist. But clearly, you know, people are having these negative symptoms and there is a dysregulation in the HPA axis. So I think they're very related.
Awesome. And so what role does stress play in adrenal fatigue or burnout then?
So I think it's the main role for sure. I think how we are living our lifestyles, especially in North America, we're go, go, go. We're always hustling. It's almost rewarded, which is so backwards. And that can easily lead to burnout or, you know, HPA axis dysfunction. So we also have to look at other things aside from lifestyle, but I do think that stress is a huge contributing factor. There are other types of stress though. So are you getting exposed to chemicals and that causes stress in the body? Or how is your gut health? Or are you eating a food, you know, 5 times a week that your body doesn't really love and agree with? And then that's causing inflammation within the body, which is a stress. And then we have to look at emotional stress. Like one of my clients this morning is dealing with burnout, and I know it's from a trauma, previous trauma. And so that needs to be dealt with talk therapy. And then also I have a lot of clients that eventually burn out who either work or just in the fitness industry or just exercise really hard. And exercise is amazing, but we must realize that it's also a stress on the body. So if we are going super hardcore and doing it very frequently, it is going to tax those adrenal glands. So there's so much in our life that plays into it, including like shift workers. Like pretty much every shift worker I know is going to feel burnt out if they're working 12-hour days and nights, especially with the pandemic right now. Just thinking of all those nurses and doctors and everyone in that hospital field, it must just be so tiring.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm sure there's probably and emotional stress that goes along with that too, like a role like that where you're taking on your patients' situations too on top of your own
Definitely.
life.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
do you have tips then for people on how to manage those stress levels so that they can kind of help to prevent or manage these symptoms as they're with their burnout?
Yeah, so some kind of more like lifestyle and like unique general ones I would say are to try and start saying no. So sometimes I find with my clients, they're just the yes people. They're the people that want to say yes to everything. They're kind of overextending themselves. They never rest and just kind of slow down. So really doing the things that light you up and saying yes to what you want to say yes to, and passing on things that aren't like a heck yeah. And then that preserves your energy levels essentially. And then also, it's really important to pay attention to sleep. I think it is so underrated, and so many people say how tired they are and they're looking to take a supplement or potentially shift their diet. But so often we don't actually change our sleep quality and the length of sleep. So really looking at your sleep routine is a great tip. And then other ways that listeners could manage stress would be being mindful of your blue light at night, as this impairs your melatonin production. So we want melatonin high in the evening so that we have a really good sleep. Where if you're looking at your iPhone and you have the regular blue light mode on, or you're watching a show on TV, that's going to definitely impair your sleep and kind of keep the cortisol high. And then there's a bunch of diet changes, which I can recommend too, which I think that we'll get into. But I think a big one is just trying to get into rest and digest. We want to kind of calm the body, calm the nervous system. So for me, that means getting into the forest with my dog. It means having slow mornings and enjoying my matcha. It means the occasional acupuncture appointment, because acupuncture puts us into rest and digest. So it varies for everyone's. I love yin yoga, meditation. I really want to focus on trying to increase meditation, and there's so many free apps out there that's a really nice free tool for people. So it's essentially like finding something that you enjoy that will lower stress, that you'll actually do and introduce into your lifestyle.
Awesome. Thank you for those tips. So you had kind of mentioned a little bit about diet, and I know research has linked stress levels into digestive health issues. So is there a link between digestion and burnout then as well?
Definitely. A huge link. What I've noticed over the few years that I've been consulting one-on-one is that everything is just so connected in the body. So someone may say, hey, I'm a gut health practitioner, or hey, I'm an adrenal stress practitioner. But at the end of the day, we're supporting all of the body systems. And if you have high stress or HPA axis dysfunction, your digestion is 100% going to be impacted. When the body goes into fight or flight, it thinks it's running away from like a tiger or a bear. It can't differentiate being having like workday stress and knowing that it will be okay versus running away from a bear. It just considers it stress. So some stress is okay. Acute stress is okay. But if it's chronic, long-term stress, that's what we're concerned about here. So digestive health, you may see constipation, bloating. You could even see undigested food in your bowel movements, loose bowels, gas. So definitely a huge connection. As a previous shift worker and dispatcher for the police department, I used to work 12-hour days and then 12-hour nights. And the reason I kind of got interested in nutrition and holistic health is because I noticed that when I was working those really long shifts and they were super high stress, that it was negatively impacting my digestion. And that's what kind of got me interested in the topic. And I went back to school to get formally trained. So definitely a huge connection here, and not one that the average person may think about. They may not realize that they have digestive imbalances because of stress. A lot of times we, think, oh, it's a certain food I'm eating, or, oh, I need more probiotics or something like that.
Okay, and then earlier you had also mentioned like food sensitivities creating additional inflammation.
Mm-hmm.
So is inflammation overall in the body an additional stressor, and is that something people should be considering?
Definitely. We want to eat lots of plants and keep the inflammatory foods low. Like, for example, canola is in a lot of foods when we're eating out, and that's like highly inflammatory. If you're eating a ton of meat, that's going to be inflammatory. So, like, just really increasing the amount of vegetables in your diet is going to reduce overall inflammation in the body. And then listening to your body as well. Like I mentioned, like, if for me personally, I don't feel great if I eat a lot of wheat. So I try and keep that low. And I notice that if I do have it, I get tired, I get constipated, I get brain fog. But other people could feel totally fine on it. So really it's about like tuning into your body, and just being mindful of ways to decrease inflammation, based on like how you're currently living, your lifestyle, and what you're currently eating.
Do you suggest people keep like a symptom journal or a diet journal or any of those sorts of things as they're trying to figure out what some of their triggers are?
Yes, that would be very helpful. And I would list it, and then I'd say how you feel after consuming that food. I think those are amazing, and I often recommend it for clients who are kind of unsure, what could be bothering them, and doing it for 3 to 5 days. That being said, sometimes we can consume a food that our body doesn't love, and sometimes the reaction is not immediate. It could be like the next day or 2 days later. So sometimes it does make it a little bit challenging to determine which one it is. So that's when I would suggest an elimination diet, and maybe for 30 days you eliminate like wheat and dairy, or you try eating a heavily plant-centered diet, and you see if there's shifts. So for example, one of my clients, we did that, and she was having pretty bad joint pain, which to me is a sign of inflammation in the body. And now she feels so much better, but she wouldn't have known unless she eliminated those foods for a bit.
That's awesome that she was able to find that out by doing that
Mm-hmm.
diet. So adaptogens are another thing that we hear a lot about, especially in this industry. So are there certain dietary changes or foods that you recommend people include that give them that adaptogenic support?
Yes. So for including, I love adaptogens so much. I have been taking adaptogens for many, many years, prior to nutrition school. So I've even taken the AOR vegan adaptogen line, which I love. And so adaptogens essentially, if anyone's not familiar with them, they essentially help the body adapt to stress. So they are an amazing set of herbs that you can include in your daily life. And I would say that you want to take a small dose consistently versus, a couple times a week and like a higher dose. It's more about like micro dosing over an extended period of time. So I love it, and again, it varies so much person to person. So definitely work with a practitioner, especially if you are on any medication, or you have to be mindful if you're pregnant or breastfeeding. But I really love ashwagandha for kind of calming the nervous system. I enjoy that in the evenings with like a turmeric elixir. I really love rhodiola for the person who kind of wants that energy boost in the morning. And then I also really like all of the medicinal mushrooms. So cordyceps, lion's mane, reishi, chaga. I think those are super nourishing, and I'm just mindful of ensuring I get the right quality there. So there's high beta glucans.
And do you tend to use those in like drink form mostly, or do you cook with them a lot, or would you prefer capsules, or do you have a preference? Does it matter?
Yeah, so for me personally, I love powders now. But when I was in the thick of it, I was definitely taking, 3 capsules every morning to kind of really support my body in a higher dose. And it was just more convenient because I could take them with breakfast at work when I was working that 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So for me, when I'm working with clients, it's mainly about client compliance and what will my client actually do. So a lot of times it's easier for them to take a pill that has all of those mixed herbs in it, versus investing in 3 or 4 different bags of the rhodiola, the ashwagandha, the maca. So I love a pill if someone is like in the later stages and we really want to bring up their energy quickly.
Okay, awesome. Do you find you use different supplements for like an earlier stage, like an alarm stage, versus more of a later stage case?
Oh, that's a really good question. So a lot of times it is based on symptoms, but I don't know, you've probably heard of the Dutch urine testing.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so I offer that. So when a client does do that, I can make a more informed decision because I'm looking at their cortisol levels based on their urine and how much they're making, how much they're storing. So when I have that, then I can shift what I offer a lot more because the more testing and information a client provides you, just the better outcome they're going to get, in my opinion. But if not, then I would probably base it more on do we want to increase energy in the morning or do we want to calm them at night and kind of choose adaptogens based on how they want to feel and where they think their cortisol is. So if they're wired at night, I'm going to do like a relaxing one. And if we do take one that's more energizing, I'm going to make sure it's taken, prior to noon so that it doesn't impact their sleep.
Okay, awesome.
Also just want to touch on something really quickly because
Yeah.
I feel like in society sometimes it's amazing to talk about what we can add in, but I also think that we're just so busy and on the go that sometimes we need to make some dietary shifts and remove some things. So I just really quickly wanted to say that being mindful of your caffeine consumption is really important because it can impact your blood sugar levels and your nervous system. And again, we want to be in that parasympathetic mode, not sympathetic. So really trying to reach for like water and like eating meals more frequently that are really well balanced with like your complex carbs and your greens and your protein and a little bit of fat. And then also just being mindful, same thing with sugar. If sometimes when we're just depleted adrenally, we want that boost of energy. So sometimes we'll just reach for sugary foods or we crave them and really, really we're just craving energy. So just really being mindful of caffeine and sugar because I often see my clients kind of almost like abusing caffeine. Like they'll have like 5 or 6 cups just because they're so tired. When really it's just working against your goal and you're depleting your adrenal glands further.
So on that note, actually, because that's a really good point, I think lots of us are caffeinated to the wazoo, right? When you're trying to just
Mm-hmm.
keep up with everything going on. Do you have less stimulating options that still help give that temporary boost while they're transitioning off of caffeine or sugar?
That's such a good question, and there's so many things that we can do. I actually have a blog post on caffeine on my website too, if anyone wants more information. But I think it's just really important to really evaluate your relationship with caffeine. So, are you having it because it's a ritual and you just enjoy it, but you don't need it? And how much are you having? So, if you're having a ton of coffee, like really analyzing why. But my preference is definitely if you are doing coffee, ensuring you're choosing an organic coffee and preferably one that is decaf is kind of where I go because we just want the nervous system to stay calm. And even with people that consume coffee frequently, there's still going to be that cortisol boost. So that would be number one. And then number two, if you're ready to kind of try going without coffee, I love matcha so much. Matcha has L-theanine in it and ECGC, which is just so good for the body, high in antioxidants, and it's just quite. It gives you energy, but you don't ever feel um, like you're not in fight or flight. Like your heart rate isn't pounding. You're not like bouncing off the roof. You kind of just the caffeine gets released really slowly. Unlike if you have coffee, you can actually Google this. If you have coffee, there's like a huge rush in energy and then a big drop, kind of like sugar. So people will often want to reach for a second cup of coffee. But I also just love chai latte. So I have like a chai powder at home and I'll make it with dairy-free milk, which is caffeine-free, or I'll do turmeric elixirs, or even if just working with a practitioner to see what herbs you can have. I love nettle and lavender and chamomile. So I drink a lot of tea as well.
Okay, awesome. Especially as like the colder months come, I think people like that cozy option,
Yeah.
right? When you're trying to just settle down. So
Yes,
that's
it's
great
so
to have
true.
those ideas.
Even yesterday, I had a iced hibiscus tea. So we can even just do iced teas, and they're going to be so nourishing for the body and provide so many nutrients, and it's going to taste delicious.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Okay, so then what is your website if people want to go read that
Yeah.
blog?
Yeah. So it's Bruce's Roots. So Bruces, and then roots like a tree or DNA. And they can just search caffeine and it'll come up. And yes, I offer one-on-one coaching virtually and in person in North Vancouver, and I have clients all over North America. And I focus on digestion, parasites, and stress.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I think this has been really enlightening and definitely at least gives people food for thought on assessing themselves too, right? Where you're at, how much you're taking on, and if you're overdoing it on the regular, which I think lots and lots of us probably are.
Yeah, it's so important to check in. And I'll just lastly say that if you are on Instagram, I changed my name. It's no longer Bruce's Roots, and people are still trying to friend request me there. So my name is on Instagram is just Jordan Bruce RHN for registered holistic nutritionist.
Okay, wonderful. Awesome. Well,
Yeah,
thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you to all the listeners who popped on to catch this conversation.
thank you.
Thank you for listening to Supplementing Health. For more information about our guests, past shows, and future topics, please visit aor.ca/podcast or aor.us/podcast. Do you have a topic you want us to cover? We invite you to engage with us on social media to request a future topic or email us at marketing@aor.ca. We hope you tune in again next week to learn more about supplementing your health.